My name's Allison Hockett.
Karen Jean Burnett Krieger.
Sarah Francis Wright.
My birthday is November 6, 1976.
September 26th. I was born in 1948.
August 1st, 1924.
We learn to be jolly. La 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 la.
I lived the outskirts of town in Bristol, Virginia.
She did not have an easy childhood because, you know, the way that she would raise, she was one of 14 kids.
Ernest, Edgar, George, Ray, Nellie, Lena. My second family is Robert, AJ, Donald, Jim, Pauline, Paul, Mary Sue, and I.
Wow, good memory. That's a good memory.
They were very poor. I mean, she was happy to get an apple or an orange for Christmas. They were that poor.
What kind of house did you live in? How many rooms did it have?
Well, was kitchen and 3 bedrooms. I slept in the bed with my siblings. My father's name was Charles Edward Rush.
What did your dad?
He was a carpenter. He worked in factories. He took us to my aunt's house when my mom was delivering a baby.
So you waited over there until
And
she
then
had the baby.
After the baby was born, the doctor's gone, he came and got us.
Tell about when you had twins, what he said when he came in the door.
When he came in the door and said, well, we got 2 this time.
Grammy, it was a tough broad because she, well, I have to give you a little backstory.
He actually didn't want any children.
She got married when she was 21 and my father was 24. And he was always was going to be rich, but never made it. And he always was looking for a get-rich-quick scheme. So after you got married, then you lived how many different places did you get dragged to by your husband, my dad?
Baltimore, Maryland, Detroit, Michigan.
Detroit, Michigan is where I was born, and we're not real sure what he was doing because back in 1948, the women never asked anything about the men, what their jobs were, so my mother was clueless, but he was doing something, and I was born there, and then 6 weeks later, they both got on a Greyhound bus and took me back to Bristol.
Well, he'd take me from one place back home and then to another place. Well, when we came to Cincinnati, I told him I wasn't going anymore. I was going to follow him anymore. So
We stayed.
So I stayed.
She put her foot down and said, we have to find a place to live and stay because when Karen starts school, I'm not going to do this. My father was a gambler along with this I guess he thought that would be a get-rich scheme also. And when I was 8 years old, my father did the proverbial, went out for the pack of cigarettes and never came back. And he took very little. He didn't take clothes, he didn't take a car, and he just was gone. We didn't see my father again until I was 32 years old. I found him myself with a private detective. I mean, think about yourself. If you were 32 years old, you had a child, you didn't have a job, and you had no money. None, not even $1. I mean, to think, and I just remember it being kind of matter of fact, like that's what she would do. She would get a job.
Now she sees that she was doing the best that she could at a time in the 1950s being a single mom and trying to work full time. You know, when there aren't that many jobs available for women. Women at that time couldn't get a loan, they couldn't own a house. You know, there was so much that women couldn't do at that time. And so that was a huge struggle for Grammy, trying to raise her daughter alone.
Anyway, so I lived with my mother, and we lived in an apartment building in Cincinnati. And across the hall, the owners of the apartment building lived. It was an older man and woman, which seemed old to me then. I think they were 50. And my mother would say, if I got too loud or was playing too loud, she would say, "You better be quiet. The man and woman across the hall will be upset." So I thought that was their name. So I called them the man. I'd say, "Hi, man. Hi, woman." Well, we got really attached to each other. They had never had any children. So I spent a lot of time going across the hall to play with man and woman.
They was like grandparents to Karen. They was crazy about her.
They were a big part of my life. And we lived there until I was like 9 or 10. And then they sold this apartment building and bought a big house. And they asked my mother if we would move in with them. So we moved right in with man and woman, and they became like my surrogate grandparents. And we lived with them until I was I think 13 or 14, and my mother got remarried after a divorce on desertion. Dad still hasn't shown up. So my mom worked in a factory, and she had never worked before, so she went to work in a factory, and that's how she supported us. And thankfully, man and woman, I think she paid them $20 a week. That's what she paid them for rent. And we lived with them until my mother got remarried. But my mother never thought about, she would never ever have thought about getting public assistance. Welfare was not intended for that. Welfare was intended for people that had husbands in World War, they were killed or injured in World War II. And that's the reason welfare was made, to help those people. And then it just continued on. But my mother never would have thought about asking for a handout from anybody. My mother was only 32 when my father left. It's funny, I think about that now, how young that is. But to me, she seemed a lot older. When we moved to the house with man and woman, my mother started to date, which was really a bad time for me. I didn't think this then, but I think now, when I think about it now, I think that my fear was that she was going to leave and not come back also. But I don't remember thinking that. But now as I look back at it, because I was really upset anytime she would go out, even with, not only on dates, but also with girlfriends. And I would just be beside myself. I just can remember sitting in a closet, and a woman coming to find me, and I remember chanting over and over, "What can I do? What 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 can I do?" I remember doing that because I was so worried about her. And, I don't think she even realized it. I think back about that now. Even though she knew I got upset, I don't think it dawned on her that the reason I was upset was because I thought she was not going to come back either. Because that was never said, but I think that's probably why. And so I kind of resented her for that. But I don't think she even knew it, but I did. I resented her for not staying home with me because I was so afraid that she'd never come back.
With Grandma living with Grammy, she's now realizes that growing up, Grammy was just doing the best that she could. She didn't always think she was the greatest mom.
And then when she got married, that was even worse because, I have a stepfather then, and he had a daughter that was 9 months younger than I am, and she would come every weekend and stay with us. In younger years, she would say things like, you're not really my sister. You don't really belong to our family because you have a different last name. And your dog's not really your dog, it's my father's dog. Just petty things that kids might say, but that was rough too, growing up with that. Were you excited when I told you were going to be a grandma and Allison was going to be born?
Uh-huh.
She was a cute little thing, wasn't she?
I was excited.
When your mother was born, it was the best day of my life. And I remember thinking, this is so crazy, but I used to think, what will I do if something happens to her? And I thought, just matter of factly, well, I'll just have to hang myself. I'll have to kill myself. I can't be without her. And then Emily came along, and I thought, well, I can't kill myself because now I have Emily. But I can't even imagine not having them.
And here's my mother. She come on, Daddy.
She did so much for us growing up, I think because Grammy grew up with not much at all. And then she was a single mom to Grandma, so she couldn't give Grandma very much of what, she wanted to. So when we came along, it was just my sister and I, and when we came along, she had the means to be able to give to us a little bit more.
She loved them more than me probably, and her favorite thing to do was she bought all of their clothes. When your mother was 16 months old, we moved to St. Louis. Your grandfather got transferred here, and my mother was well, I first told her on the phone, I said, Larry has a job in St. Louis, and she said, oh, you mean he's going to have to look for a new job? And I said, no, we're going to have to move there. Well, she was devastated because they were so attached to your mom. But so we got through that, which was horrible. Actually, the day that we moved, they kept your mom that day while we were getting packed up to go, and I made your grandfather go over and pick her up because I couldn't go over there and face them again. But they were so upset. But I was also very homesick. I went home 9 times the first year. I flew home because I wasn't working, and I had Allison. Allison could fly free, and I could get a flight. It was $50 round trip. I could fly home. So I went home 9 times the first year.
Tell about Allison, how she loved Emily, and how she would hold her on her lap all the time.
Yeah.
Tell them.
She loved Emily. She just held her like she was a little doll.
That's so cute.
So sweet.
Yeah, she did.
Every time we'd go home, in the bedroom, she would have clothes for them, all laid out. She had twin beds, and she'd have your mom's on one, and she'd have Emily's on the other. All of these cute outfits laid out, ready for them, and then they would all take turns trying them on and modeling, coming to the living room to model them for us.
I got this shirt for Christmas. I got these pants for Christmas. For my grandma. Over there, show Grandma.
You gonna hold your clothes up? Allison, you need to model what you guys chose for your mother.
Grammy wanted to do that for us because she hadn't been able to do that for Grandma when she was little, so she would buy our school clothes every single year. She would buy all of our school clothes. She paid for my braces. She paid for my first car. She paid for our first computer in the household.
I came home from shopping with Grandma and Mom, and Dad told me to go turn my lights on, and I walked in there, and I almost ran and hit my head on the desk because I didn't even know it was in there, and I got so excited I started screaming and rolling on the floor.
Well, what kind of desk was it?
Roll top desk.
It's interesting because I had a lot of resentment about my mother for many reasons. I get maybe I was blaming her that he left. I don't know why. And I blamed her for everything. I blamed her for, let's see, I graduated from high school in 1966, so there was never a thought that I would go to college.
Grandma, growing up, always pushed reading and education for us, and I think that's because Grammy and Grandma didn't go to college, and that was something that was really important for Grandma, for us to go to college. It was never a question when I was growing up. It was not if we were going, but it was when we were going. We were definitely going to college. That was never a question for her, and Grandma always pushed that for us, because that's something that Grandma, I know, would have liked to go to college, but they didn't have the money, and they couldn't have taken out loans at that time, so she didn't get to go, and that was something that I know she really regretted. So she pushed that for both me and Emily to make sure that she had the means to send us.
But it's interesting. Now that she lives with me and has been living with me for 2 years, I have gotten to know her a lot better. You know, she just came from a poor family, uneducated, poor family. They all did the best they could. And there's lots of things that she just didn't know better.
Happy to have Grammy now here, living with Grandma in St. Louis, because she was in Ohio my whole life. And even though we were close, it's just really nice to have her here, knowing that she's safe and that, you know, she's being taken care of really well by Grandma. And also I think it's improved the relationship between Grammy and Grandma, because they didn't always see eye to eye growing up.
You know, because I asked her one time, why would you not leave my father if that's the kind of life he was leading? And she said, Karen, I was just a poor country girl. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what to do. And she didn't have money, and she didn't want to go back home to her poor family. So I understand now. So I think I've learned these, maybe it's a good idea that she's been here these past 2 years, because I've learned to understand her a lot more than I ever did. So I've kind of let go of all that resentment. Be true to yourself. Do exactly what you want to do, not what your mother and father want you to do, not what your friends think you should do, what you have a passion for. Do what you want to do, because you're going to be doing that for the rest of your days. But I do know things that I have realized that made me happy. My children made me happy.
If you want to have children, don't have them too far apart. So they'll be company for each other.
I don't think you have to have children to be happy, but they've made me happy. My grandchildren certainly made me happy. But other things like volunteering, you know, getting out of yourself. I find that so many older people are so into themselves that they're miserable because they're at home and they say they're lonely, and they're, you know, especially a lot of times there's lots of single women because men tend to die before women. So there's a lot of single women that live alone. And I always read about them in the news, on the internet, about how miserable they are and they don't have anyone and they're lonely. People need to get out of themselves. And if they would, I volunteered with a group from Nepal. I had a little senior group that we did crafts. I was the only one that spoke English, but we had such a good time. And then I also helped some people that were trying to get their citizenship. They were from China. If people would get out of themselves and volunteer and do something for somebody else, it makes you so much happier. It's amazing what volunteer work will do. But a lot of people don't want to give or do that, but I think that keeps you young.
Have a lot of friends and good neighbors, so you can visit with them all the time.
Definitely to spend as much time with family and friends, because I think in the end, that's all that matters, is your family and your friends. But I would love to own my own business. I don't know what that looks like at this point, but I still have a lot of years left to work, and I would love to own my own business someday.
Get yourself a little dog, because the kids will really enjoy that.
I'm just so grateful to have my grandma still alive at her age of 99, and to still have my mom. I know a lot of people my age don't have their mom or their grandma, and I'm lucky enough to have them both. I think they're both a great influence in your life, and I love that they're there for you, and they can tell you all of those old stories from the past. It's just fun to hear all their experiences of how things have changed since Grammy was a little girl.
Turn around and look at Bill. See how fat her butt is?
Real funny, real funny.